considered a myth by linguists. The capacity for the use of language is considered by many linguists to lie primarily in the domain of grammar, and to be linked with competence, rather than with the growth of vocabulary. Even a very small lexicon is theoretically capable of producing an infinite number of sentences. Relativity is constructed popularly through the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Relativists believe that the structure of a particular language is capable of influencing the cognitive patterns through which a person shapes his or her worldview. Universalists believe that there are commonalities between human perception as there is in the human capacity for language, while relativists believe that this varies from language to language, and person to person. While the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is an elaboration of this idea expressed through the writings of American linguists Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf, it was Sapir's student Harry Heuer who termed it thus. The 20th-century German linguist Leo Weisgerber also wrote extensively about the theory of relativity. Relativists argue for the case of differentiation at the level of cognition and, in semantic domains, the emergence of cognitive linguistics in the 1980s also revived an interest in linguistic relativity. Thinkers like George Lakoff have argued that language reflects different cultural metaphors, while the French philosopher of language Jacques Derrida's writings have been seen to be closely associated with the relativist movement in linguistics, especially through deconstruction, and was even heavily criticized in the media at the time of his death for his theory of relativism. Your structures, linguistic structures or pairings of meaning and form. Any particular pairing of meaning and form is a Saussurian sign. For instance, the meaning cat, it is represented worldwide with a wide variety of different sound patterns in oral languages, movements of the hands and face in sign languages, and written symbols in written languages. Linguistic patterns have proven their importance for the knowledge engineering field, especially with the ever-increasing amount of available data. Linguists focusing on structure attempt to understand the rules regarding language use that native speakers know, not always consciously. All linguistic structures can be broken down into component parts that are combined, according to subconscious rules, over multiple levels of analysis. For instance, consider the structure of the word tenth on two different levels of analysis. On the level of internal word structure, known as morphology, the word tenth is made up of one linguistic form, indicating a number, and another form indicating ordinality. The rule governing the combination of these forms ensures that the ordinality marker, th, follows the number 10. On the level of sound structure, known as phonology, structural analysis shows that the n sound in tenth is made differently from the n sound in ten spoken alone. Although most speakers of English are consciously aware of the rules governing internal structure of the word pieces of tenth, they are less often aware of the rule governing its sound structure. Linguists focused on structure find and analyze rules such as these, which govern how native speakers use language. Linguistics has many subfields concerned with particular aspects of linguistic structure. The theory that elucidates on these, as propounded by Noam Chomsky, is known as generative theory or universal grammar. These subfields range from those focused primarily on form to those focused primarily on meaning. They also run the gamut of level of analysis of language, from individual sounds, to words, to phrases, up to cultural discourse. Grammar subfields that focus on a grammatical study of language include the following: phonetics, the study of the physical properties of speech sound, production and perception; phonology, the study of sounds as abstract elements in the speaker's mind that distinguish meaning; phonemes, morphology, the study of morphemes, or the internal structures of words and how they can be modified; syntax, the study of how words combine to form grammatical phrases and sentences; semantics, the study of the meaning of words, lexical semantics, and fixed word combinations; phraseology, and how these combine to form the meanings of sentences; pragmatics, the study of how utterances are used in communicative acts, and the role played by context and non-linguistic knowledge in the transmission of meaning; discourse analysis, the analysis of language use in texts, spoken, written, or signed. Stylistics, the study of linguistic factors, rhetoric, diction, stress, that place a discourse in context. Semiotics, the study of signs and sign processes, semiosis, indication, designation, likeness, analogy, metaphor, symbolism, signification, and communication style. Stylistics is the study and interpretation of texts for aspects of their linguistic and tonal style. Stylistic analysis entails the analysis of description of particular dialects and registers used by speech communities. Stylistic features include rhetoric, diction, stress, satire, irony, dialogue, and other forms of phonetic variations. Stylistic analysis can also include the study of language in canonical works of literature, popular fiction, news, advertisements, and other forms of communication in popular culture as well. It is usually seen as a variation in communication that changes from speaker to speaker and community to community. In short, stylistics is the interpretation of text. Approach is theoretical alone. Major debate in linguistics concerns the very nature of language and how it should be understood. Some linguists hypothesize that there is a module in the human brain that allows people to undertake linguistic behavior, which is part of the formalist approach. This universal grammar is considered to guide children when they learn language and to constrain what sentences are considered grammatical in any human language. Proponents of this view, which is predominant in those schools of linguistics that are based on the generative theory of Noam Chomsky, do not necessarily consider that language evolved for communication in particular. They consider instead that it has more to do with the process of structuring human thought. See also formal grammar. Functional. Another group of linguists, by contrast, use the term language to refer to a communication system that developed to support cooperative activity and extend cooperative networks. Such theories of grammar, called functional, view language as a tool that emerged and is adapted to the communicative needs of its users, and the role of cultural evolutionary processes are often emphasized over that of biological evolution. Methodology. Linguistics is primarily descriptive. Linguists describe and explain features of language without making subjective judgments on whether a particular feature or usage is good or bad. This is analogous to practice. In other sciences, a zoologist studies the animal kingdom without making subjective judgments on whether a particular species is better or worse than another. Prescription, on the other hand, is an attempt to promote particular linguistic usages over others, often favoring a particular dialect or acrolect. This may have the aim of establishing a linguistic standard, which can aid communication over large geographical areas. It may also, however, be an attempt by speakers of one language or dialect to exert influence over speakers of other languages or dialects. See linguistic imperialism. An extreme version of prescriptivism can be found among censors who attempt to eradicate words and structures that they consider to be destructive to society. Prescription, however, may be practiced appropriately in the teaching of language, like in ELT, where certain fundamental grammatical rules and lexical terms need to be introduced to a second language speaker who is attempting to acquire the language. Anthropology. The objective of describing languages is often to uncover cultural knowledge about communities. The use of anthropological methods of investigation on linguistic sources leads to the discovery of certain cultural traits among a speech community through its linguistic features. It is also widely used as a tool in language documentation with an endeavor to curate endangered languages. However, now, linguistic inquiry uses the anthropological method to understand cognitive, historical, socio-linguistic and historical processes that languages undergo as they change and evolve, as well as general anthropological inquiry uses the linguistic method to excavate into culture. In all aspects, anthropological inquiry usually uncovers the different variations and relativities that underlie the usage of language. Sources. Most contemporary linguists work under the assumption that spoken data and signed data are more fundamental than written data. This is because speech appears to be universal to all human beings capable of producing and perceiving it, while there have been many cultures and speech communities that lack written communication. Features appear in speech which aren't always recorded in writing, including phonological rules, sound changes, and speech errors. All natural writing systems reflect a spoken language, or potentially assigned one, even with pictographic scripts like Dongba writing Nashi homophones with the same pictogram, and text in writing systems used for two languages changing to fit the spoken language being recorded. Speech evolved before human beings invented writing. People learned to speak and process spoken language more easily and earlier than they did with writing. Nonetheless, linguists agree that the study of written language can be worthwhile and valuable for research that relies on corpus linguistics and computational